As the 2024 Republican field takes the debate stage tonight, you'll be able to hear straight from the horse's mouth about the extreme and wildly out of touch vision, and I put that in air quotes, for America. This group supports ending Social Security and Medicare as we know it, cutting taxes for their rich friends, undermining our election, something that we know a little bit about in Wisconsin, and taking our freedoms. And yes, that includes a nationwide ban on abortion. Let me be crystal clear about this. The 2024 MAGA Republican presidential candidates are running on their extreme anti-choice records. DeSantis signed extreme legislation in Florida that bans abortion before many women even know that they are pregnant. Tim Scott co-sponsored multiple abortion bans and vowed to sign the, quote, most conservative national abortion ban possible if elected. Nikki Haley signed an abortion ban as governor of South Carolina that had no exceptions for rape or incest and threatened doctors with jail time. Mike Pence has called for banning abortion in every state and was actually the first Republican presidential hopeful to do so. Chris Christie opposed Roe versus Wade and said that striking it down was the right decision to make for the court. Doug Burgum signed one of the strictest abortion bans in the country as North Dakota's governor, with no exceptions for victims of rape or incest after 6 weeks. And Vivek Ramaswamy supports 6-week abortion bans at the state level, again, before many women even would know that they were pregnant. I'm sure that they're going to talk about freedom on the debate stage tonight. But what about the freedom to make my own health care decisions? I guess that their version of freedom doesn't include women. And here's the bottom line. The American people don't want anything to do with their abortion bans. Voters in states all across this great country, including right here in Wisconsin, have made it clear that the craven abortion bans are wildly unpopular and out of step with the American public. And with the people on our side, Democrats are fighting back against their bigotry and doubling down on our commitment to protect reproductive health care amid ongoing Republican attacks. Fighting for freedom, for more rights, not less, has been the cornerstone of President Biden's first term. And I've got a message for these Republicans. We are just getting started. As Republicans fixate on ripping away more of my rights and yours, I am grateful to have a president and a vice president who are fighting tooth and nail for the freedoms that we hold near and dear to our hearts. Thank you again for being here today, and now it's my pleasure to introduce someone who is organizing thousands of voters and volunteers across the great state of Wisconsin, the chair of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin, and my friend, Ben Wickler.
Thank you so much, Mayor Satcher Rhodes Conway, and thank you for your constant defense of democracy in the state where democracy is on the line. I am honored to join Chair Harrison and Congressman Richmond in the state that could determine the 2024 presidential election and where the tale of the tape is crystal clear. In Wisconsin, MAGA extremism falls flat. We're anticipating a debate tonight where candidates are leapfrogging each other to the most extreme fringes of ultra-MAGAism. And yet, when you look at the record in the state of Wisconsin, over and over, Wisconsin voters reject MAGA extremism. They reject the attacks on fundamental freedoms and economic security and dignity. They reject the very kind of ultra-MAGA Republican candidates that will be swarming the debate stage here in Milwaukee tonight. So let's just look at the record for a moment. In the state of Wisconsin, Democrats and Democratic-supported candidates have won 15 of the last 18 statewide elections. Just ask Senator Tammy Baldwin. Ask Governor Evers and Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez. Ask Attorney General Josh Kaul. Ask President Biden and Vice President Harris who has been winning elections in the state of Wisconsin. This spring, in our state Supreme Court race, voters had as vivid a choice as you could imagine between a Trump-endorsed former Supreme Court justice who personally advised the plot to overturn the 2020 election, and a judge that they hadn't met before, Janet Protasewicz, who ran with clarity that she would always consider the case before her rather than just the agenda of right-wing MAGA billionaires, and who believed at a personal level in reproductive freedom. That election was a choice between MAGA extremism on the one hand and common sense, fairness, and justice and freedom on the other. And Wisconsin voters gave Janet Protasewicz an 11-point landslide. This spring was a freedom landslide in Wisconsin. It was a clear message from Wisconsin voters that they wanted to turn the page on the era of extremism represented by all 8 of the Republican candidates who will be ascending to the stage of the presidential debate tonight. And their message this spring was consistent with the message that they have sent over and over from 2018, when Democrats swept every statewide election for the first time since 1982, to 2020, when they reversed Trump's victory in 2016 and became the tipping point state for the Biden-Harris ticket, to 2022, when they elected a Democratic governor in a year with a Democratic president for the first time since 1962, to this spring, when they flipped the majority on Wisconsin State Supreme Court for the first time in 15 years. The issues that propelled these elections are on the table again in 2024, and every one of the Republicans running for president at this moment is wrong on these issues. Wisconsinites have tasted the alternative. They experienced 8 years of proto-MAGA extremism from Scott Walker. They experienced the attacks on workers' rights, the attacks on reproductive freedom, the attacks on public schools and teachers, the attacks on democracy and voting rights. And they rejected that kind of politics. They rejected Scott Walker in 2018, and now because of Governor Evers, Senator Baldwin, because of President Harris and President Biden and Vice President Harris, because of Attorney General Kaul, Wisconsin has been and continues to be on the right track. And Wisconsinites are experiencing record low unemployment and rising wages and the possibility of a restoration and an expansion of freedom and democracy in the state that all of us Wisconsinites love. That is what Wisconsinites want to see more of. That is what they are voting for. And that is what they will not see on display at the Republican debate tonight. The record is crystal clear. Wisconsinites do not want to go backwards to MAGA extremism. They do not want a future in which their freedoms are ripped away. They want to move forward. That's our state's motto, and that's what President Biden and Vice President Harris represent. So we are fired up, we are watching, and across the state of Wisconsin, last weekend and weekends all the way from now until November of 2024, Wisconsin Democrats will be knocking on doors, having conversations, organizing, and doing the work to ensure that none of the people we see on this debate stage get anywhere close to the White House. And with that, I'm so honored to introduce someone who believes in the power of organizing and the message of freedom, democracy, and common sense for working people in our country, our great Democratic National Committee Chair, Jamie Harrison.
Hey folks, I hope you are well. Welcome to Milwaukee. I first want to thank Mayor Conway. I want to thank Chair Wickler. I want to thank Jason Ray, our secretary, who is here as well, who is born and raised here in Milwaukee. And I want to thank Congressman Cedric Richmond, the co-chair of the Biden-Harris campaign. You know, for the past several months, we've seen the 2024 MAGA Republican field crisscross the country. And they have been running a race, folks, a race to the bottom to secure this Republican nomination for president. And tonight in prime time, Americans will have an opportunity to see in action the most extreme, the most divisive, the most chaotic slate of presidential candidates in history when these MAGA 2024 Republicans take the debate stage here in Milwaukee. and I don't know if it's going to be a debate, but more like a circus. You know, they may try to differentiate themselves, but the truth is that every single one of these candidates, from Donald Trump on down, are extreme. They want to put our economic recovery in reverse and raise costs on working families. They want to give tax handouts to corporations and the ultra-wealthy while slashing Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. They want to erase the progress that we've made in the fight against climate change, even as millions of Americans suffer more frequent and more severe weather events. They want to erase our history and teach our children that slaves benefited from slavery. And they want to take away our freedoms and push a nationwide ban on abortion, even as voters have repeatedly made it clear in red states, in blue states, in purple states, that we're not interested in their anti-women, anti-choice agenda. That's what they stand for. And now here's who they are. We have Ron DeSantis, as we say in the South, bless his heart. This guy has pushed an extreme MAGA agenda focused on taking away Floridians' freedoms instead of focusing on the high costs that are crushing Florida families. We have Tim Scott, I know him well, proud Tea Party Republican, who has promised to govern from, and I quote, the far conservative right. We have Nikki Haley, who I know even better, who as governor signed into law an extreme abortion ban that had no exceptions for rape or incest. We have Mike Pence, who is still Trump's MAGA wingman and was the first candidate to call for banning abortion nationwide. We have Vivek Ramaswamy, who is so desperate to be Donald Trump 2.0 that he's running around spreading conspiracy theories about 9/11 and threatening to change the voting age from 18 to 25. We have Doug Burgum, who has signed some of the most extreme MAGA legislation into law in North Dakota and is trying to buy his way into the Oval Office. And we cannot forget good old Chris Christie, who has suddenly forgotten the fact that he campaigned for Donald Trump in 2020 and is every bit as MAGA as the rest. So let me sum this up for you all. No matter who you pick, this group is as extreme as it gets. A bag full of MAGA apples, and they are all rotten. They are wildly out of step with the American people. While they're busy racing to win over the MAGA base, President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris have been laser focused on fighting for the issues that matter most to the American people. And by every measure, my friends, they have delivered. They've delivered the strongest 2.5 years of job growth in the history of this nation. Over 13 million jobs created, including good-paying union jobs, Nikki Haley, union jobs. An unemployment rate near 50-year lows, and a record low unemployment for African Americans. The largest infrastructure investment since Dwight Eisenhower. 4 years Donald Trump talked about infrastructure week, never filled a pothole. Joe Biden got it done in his first year. The most ambitious climate agenda in the world. An American manufacturing, not boom, a renaissance. Lower energy, healthcare, and prescription drug costs. And in Wisconsin alone, where Trump once touted thousands of jobs through a Foxconn project that never materialized, the president's economic agenda has delivered tenfold. Private companies have invested more than $3 billion here in Wisconsin in clean energy infrastructure, including $1 billion for the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. We provided more than $1 billion in funding to provide affordable, high-speed internet, created more than 135,000 new jobs, and delivered over $145 million in home energy cost savings for families. Folks, that is Bidenomics in action. On one side, we have President Biden and Vice President Harris and Democrats who think that America's best days are ahead of her and focus on the issues that matter most to everyday Americans. And on the other side, we have MAGA Republicans who are fixated on dividing us. They want to take away your freedoms, are skeptical of climate change, and are campaigning on ending Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid as we know it. Contrast couldn't be clearer. In 2020, the American people made their voices heard when they chose unity over division, hope over fear, competence over chaos. And they're going to do it again next November when they send President Biden and Vice President Harris and Democrats up and down the ballot back to the White House, back to Congress, back to state legislatures to finish the job that they've started. Folks, it's indeed my honor and pleasure to welcome to the stage now my good friend, Congressman Cedric Richmond.
Thank you, Chair Harrison, Chair Wickler, and Mayor Rhodes Conway. Thank you for your public service. Thank you for what you do. And I think it's the best example of the difference between us and those that will debate tonight, is that the focus is always on the American people. It's on them. It's on their community. It's on their families. And how do we make their lives better? And I want to thank both chairs for organizing this so that people understand that there are two parties espousing their values tonight. And you will see one side that is a race to the extremes in order to get to a MAGA base, and the other are the four people assembled here talking about the American people, the challenges they face, and how productive this president was. And I will try my best not to go over some of the things that were already said, but what I do want to focus on, because I was there to witness a lot of it, was the focus and the accomplishments of President Biden and Vice President Harris since the first day that they took office. They've worked to restore the soul of this nation, protect and defend our democracy, protect our fundamental rights of all Americans, and to grow the economy from the bottom up and the middle out. And that, I just want to say, is not just a philosophy, it is a value proposition. Because the president said in his campaign when he started was that the middle class built this country and labor built the middle class. And he wanted to restore that focus on working families. And so when we talk about his first 2.5, 3 years, it's been historic. And I'll just run down some of the things that distinguish us. While Donald Trump had the worst jobs record since Herbert Hoover, President Biden has helped create 13.5 million jobs, the most ever created in 2.5 years. As Jamie mentioned, we have the lowest unemployment rate in almost 50 years, and some of the lowest unemployment for African Americans and Latino families on record. After a recession that was made worse by Trump's failure to tackle the COVID-19 pandemic, President Biden has led the strongest economic recovery of any industrialized nation in the world. And I want to make sure that people understand that President Biden came in office focused on fighting COVID, but also restoring this economy and making sure that we continue to lead the country. The other thing that distinguishes this president from the people that you will hear tonight, when the president talks about COVID and leading us out of COVID, he doesn't talk about it just as a pandemic. He talks about it as the fact that so many people lost husbands and wives and children and parents, and that it was a toll on the families in this country. After President Trump promised to restore manufacturing, even took credit for manufacturing projects that never happened. Jamie mentioned Foxconn here, and there are others. President Biden has ushered in a record number of new manufacturing jobs, and here in the Badger State and all across the country. And what that means is people going back to work, families having another breadwinner in the house. And what the president has always said since day one is that a job is not just about income. It's also about dignity. It's about humanity. And so that's why we have such a focus on the job creation, the historic job creation by this president. We also delivered, unlike the former president touting lowering drug costs, President Biden actually did it. And when you talk about capping insulin at $35 for our seniors. That is a big deal. That means our seniors don't have to make the hard choice between groceries and medicine, or paying their rent or other bills and their medicine. And that's the type of leadership that we are so proud of in the Biden-Harris administration, because again, this is about families. This is not about politics. This is about delivering on purpose and making sure that we fulfill and help our American families. And so when we talk about the Republicans turning a blind eye to the climate crisis, this president has delivered the most expansive address to climate in the history of this country. I'm from New Orleans with Katrina. We see what's happening in Hawaii. We see what's happening in California. We see what happens with our forest fires across the country and hurricanes that go from the Gulf of Mexico all the way up to the East Coast. But this president decided to tackle that because, again, this is about the American people. And so while, we had 1 million infrastructure weeks while I was in Congress, the president delivered on none of them, the former president. But this president came together with the leadership that he talked about during the campaign, and in a bipartisan manner passed an infrastructure bill. And I know for a fact he hates when I just say an infrastructure bill, because that's not how he looks at it. He looks at it like a mother or a father or anyone that's hours that they don't have to sit in traffic every day when they go to work. He looks at it, the fact that there are 10 million households that don't have to drink contaminated water anymore because it's coming through lead pipes. 400,000 daycares in this country where children don't have to drink contaminated water anymore. So again, I will say that this is about the American people for the Biden-Harris administration. And the last thing I'll say on accomplishments, you have a president that actually took on the NRA and beat them. It hasn't been done in over 30 years because he knows it's about our families that are losing loved ones. It's about parents that send their kids to school scared of what's going to happen. It's about the fact that people actually buy armored backpacks for their children. So you'll hear tonight more about banning books than you will about banning assault weapons. And from our president and our vice president, they are focused on making sure that we keep our families safe. So I won't go any further because I prefer to you all to ask questions, but I will just tell you that the difference you will see tonight is a race to the extreme issues that the MAGA base want to talk about and what they want to hear, and you will hear a feeding frenzy in an attempt to do that. But from here, you will hear us focused again on the challenges that the American people face, our ability to meet them, and our ability to meet the challenges that we know coming down the road. And the last thing I will say is that when you talk about leadership and you talk about determination and you talk about the ability to do things others couldn't, the war in Ukraine is a great example. This president united the West on Russian aggression. And I know that you all remember because you all covered it. Even when President Zelensky didn't think that Russia was invading, we were still uniting the West to make sure that we could help Ukraine when that moment came. And that's the difference between rhetoric and leadership. And we are proud of the leadership of both President Biden and Vice President Harris. I'll call them all up to lead us in Q&A.
All right, folks, raise your hand if you have a question. And okay, cool. Let's go to Aaron first.
Chairman, thank you for holding this. On the campaign trail, Republican candidates, especially DeSantis, Nikki Haley, often say they're not expecting President Biden to be the Democratic nominee in 2024. That might be brought up today on the debate stage. What is your response and take on that?
Well, you already know, DeSantis lives in a place where Disney World is. This guy is in some fairy tale land. In the end of the day, I think, when was it? February of this year, the DNC passed a unanimous resolution to support President Joe Biden and Vice President Kamala Harris. So my advice to my Republican friends, I'm channeling Lindsey Graham here. My advice to my Republican friends, focus on your circus. We got ours.
The Biden campaign a few days ago put out a statement after news came out that Trump was not going to plan to come to the debate. Biden's Democratic challengers have called for debates. Why is he not debating?
One, President Biden is the Democratic nominee, along with Vice President Harris. And if you look at both parties, when they have an incumbent president, that incumbent president participates in no debates, and there's no primary on our side. Well, there's a primary, but the key to it is the fact that we've already endorsed President Biden. No party has done it. I think it goes back to Reagan and Ford. So it's just something that has been well settled, and it's just another issue that people want to use as a distraction from us focusing on still delivering for the American people and making sure that we address the issues and the challenges that they face.
Something, Andrew Feinberg with The Independent, something you hear from former President, Governor DeSantis, and a lot of the other Republican candidates is that the U.S. is a nation in decline. The U.S. is like a third world country. The U.S. is crumbling. We don't have a country anymore. It's falling apart. How is the president going to come out and say, no, this is not a nation in decline, if that is his message? What's the reaction to that negativity on the Republican side?
Can I?
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
I would invite anybody who thinks that we are a nation in decline to come to cities, to come to places like Madison, Wisconsin, where we have the lowest unemployment rate, or damn near close to it, in the country, where our population growth and our economic growth is driving the growth of the state of Wisconsin, where we have a thriving university despite refusal of Republicans at the state level to invest in it, where we have a strong job market, where we have a beautiful environment, and where we are tackling the issues of the day like climate change, where we're building housing, where we're building transit, where we are creating a place that people want to be. So I would suggest that anybody thinks that this country is in decline, come to cities. Because Democratic mayors all across the nation are creating great places where people want to be, where growth is happening, and where our economy is growing. This is not a nation in decline. This is a great nation, and it's made up of cities and people all across America. Again, that the president and the vice president are fighting for every day.
Just a follow-up. Something I don't believe any of you mentioned is the man who won't be here tonight, his legal troubles. And that's something that the president has not mentioned much, and I know that's because he's the president and doesn't want to talk about ongoing prosecutions, but can we expect the Biden campaign, Mr. Richmond, to go after a former president more aggressively on his legal problems? I mean, the man's been indicted 4 times, and we hear not much from the campaign about it.
Well, if we did it, what would you do?
Right about it?
So, in a serious answer to the question, the president is the leader of this party, and we don't comment on ongoing investigations. I think it's out there for people to see, people to read. It will play out, and I think that we're not going to let that be a distraction from continuing to bring costs down, wages up, and focus on the American people.
Hi, James Stratton from Channel 12 here in town. We talk about moments on a debate stage all the time, right? You're the party not on the debate stage tonight. How do you capture a moment in a swing state like this on a night when the other party is on stage?
Well, again, we don't think about it as capturing a moment, and you're going to hear this clearly in the theme of our remarks. We have a president and vice presidents that are still focused on governing. We're going to make sure that our voices are heard and that we make sure that people understand the priorities and the positions of the Democratic Party. But I think tonight, what you're going to hear and what you're going to see is a group of individuals with an agenda that the majority of the American people don't want any part of. And so we're not trying to get in their debate. We're not trying to influence it. And we're not looking for a debate moment. What we're looking for is to make sure that people understand where we stand and the president and the vice president, where they stand, what their leadership has done. And we are glad to let the other side have their prime time moment tonight, where the American people will get to see how extreme their positions are and how widely unpopular they are. Jamie, you have?
No, I want to add to what Cedric said. I think the president did this marvelously in the State of the Union address. Remember Republicans were talking about decimating Medicaid and Social Security? And then many of them claimed, oh, we never said that. The clutching of the pearls during that moment. Because I was right there in the chamber. And the president said, well, great, we're all in agreement. You're not going to touch Medicare and Social Security. And so we were able to take that off of the table. But right after that, some of the Republicans came back to where they were on these extreme positions to gut Medicare and Social Security. Tonight, you're going to hear one of those moments in which they're going to claim and they're going to try to out-MAGA each other, go to the far right, to gut Medicare and Social Security, to outright each other in terms of abortion. And we aren't going to make up words. We're going to share their words with the rest of the American people. To say it's not Democrats making something up about where they are in these positions, that's not our job. But what we will do is to paint the contrast, to make sure that the American people know how out of touch and how extreme this group of candidates really are. Because that's the really important part. It's that contrast. Bottom line, this election, hope versus fear. We believe that our better days as a nation, and it goes to your question, are ahead of us, not behind us. They believe that our better days are behind us. And that is the difference in this election. Joe Biden wakes up every day thinking about how to make the lives of the American people better. They wake up every day thinking about how do I get back into power. That is the difference between the Democratic Party led by Joe Biden and the Republican Party led by MAGA extremists.
Governor Christie has been the most outspoken of the Republican candidates against Donald Trump, so I'm curious if you think by him being on the debate stage does Democrats any favor if he were to attack Trump or press other candidates on.
Y'all need to stop giving Chris Christie all his credit. Remember, he was the debate coach for Donald Trump, right? So don't give him credit because, you know, there's a saying that we have in the South, a broken clock is right at least twice a day, right? So don't give him this credit because now he's out there talking about Donald Trump when he doubled down and was in his corner for all of the MAGA extremism over the course of those 4 years. I'm glad he woke up. Maybe more of them need to wake up. They love to talk about woke all the time. Maybe they all need to wake up because they need to understand that they're out of step with the American people. So Chris Christie can do what he wants, but he's doing that because he's trying to become president of the United States. It's not because it's some altruistic thing, because he feels like he's doing the best thing for all of the American people. He wants to be president. And so he needs to find some way to differentiate himself. I guess he's smarter than the rest because he's trying to figure out some way to differentiate himself from Donald Trump. But in the end of the day, don't give him credit for it because he's still a MAGA extremist.
Will President Biden commit to debating in the general?
We have not had a conversation about that at all. I'm sure one day we will, but it's not today, and I don't have any news on that. But what we're going to continue to do is continue to govern because Vice President Harris and President Biden have a job to do, and they take it serious. So when we have news on that, we'll let you know.
Just a quick follow-up again. McCarthy saying the impeachment inquiry could begin when Congress returns in September. Will that hinder Biden's re-election campaign, and will the campaign be paying attention to any attacks on Biden tonight related to the Biden investigation?
Well, I'm sure the president will continue to govern, and as far as McCarthy wakes up every day praying he still has 218 votes to be Speaker of the House. I've been there and I know it. So depending on what he says today, it may change tomorrow, depending on where a handful of Republicans decide that they want to drag him around. So we have really no time to focus on what McCarthy says day by day. We will, of course, the administration, which is much separate from the DNC, they will do their job, and we will continue to do our job, which is to remind the American people that this is a choice between chaos and division and a president focused on their issues.
All right, that's all the time we have. Really appreciate it. Feel free to follow up with any of us, and we'll get you whatever answers you need. But thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, everybody.
We have similar questions. Yeah. Dude, you've been killing it. I literally was like off dinner and I just saw your stuff. It's easy. Why? Yeah, you're killing it. You're doing great work. Let's go. Following Florida, man. As you know. Who gets that? You're not on the trail a lot? Not really. Really? Sure.
Stop giving it out. Stop it. He's been trained.